what you get and you turn it into. Honestly, you promised me I'm never gonna find you faking. No, no, no.
Well, we are in the final part of this series, Complicated. It's been an 8-week journey. And we've had one goal together, to uncomplicate what God never intended to be complicated. He never designed the mission of the church to be some complicated mess. But here's the thing, the first church complicated things, and some 2,000 years later, we people have had a habit of complicating things. So we've just been, looking at the story of the launch and the movement of the church found in the book of Acts, and we've just been, trying to uncomplicate it all. Now, in parts 6 and 7, we really focused in on the barriers that will shove people out of church or keep people out of church, barriers that God was so intentional to say, hey, no, let's remove the barriers. Let's remove the barriers because the mission of the church is that important. And here's what we all know. There's barriers within the church to this day. Churches have music barriers, styles of music, types of music, only hymns or no hymns or different worship songs, different instruments. There's so many barriers around music. There's teaching barriers. There's people that teach at such a high intellectual level that no one understands anything. They use all the big words, and people just like, what does that word mean? One of the things we try to do is we want the Bible to be accessible for all people, no matter if you've never read it before or you've been reading it for decades. Style is another barrier. Should church be more solemn? Should it be more liturgical? Should it be more contemporary? Can it be loud? Can it be, right? Like, there's all of these style barriers that all of a sudden churches put on. There's relevance barriers. The church has had a habit of just not being relevant. There's, the unfriendliness barrier where if you've ever walked into one of those churches where no one knows how to smile. I mean, our churches are just, we nail the friendliness factor. I'm not saying we're perfect in it. I'm just saying you walk in our churches and people are smiling and excited. And there's the boring barrier. One of the biggest compliments I get as a communicator, I love this, is when someone's newer to the life of one of our churches and they go, man, I didn't sleep during your talk thing. I didn't fall asleep. I'm like, high five, I'll take that. In fact, we love to have fun here. If you were at one of our physical churches at part 7 last week, you'll know that there was a whole bunch of people who got pies in their face. Why? Because you were all generous. And we raised money to help send kids to Velocity Camp. And part of the fun was getting pies. And, I had a small pie in my face. Right? We just want to have fun. And one of the greatest tools we have to not just remove barriers, but to ensure that barriers aren't constructed is to hold on to that mission is greater than method. It's all about the mission. Jesus was so crystal clear about the mission of the church: to go, make disciples, teach, baptize, go to people who don't know Jesus. Be my witnesses, Jesus said. And the Apostle Paul, writing to the church in Corinth, he just simply wrote it this way. He goes, I've become all things to all people so that by all possible means, that's all method. He goes, every method possible, I'm going to leverage by all possible means. And then he gets to the mission part. That I might save some. The mission demands for us to do all things by all possible means, to share Jesus with all people. Why? For some to put their faith and trust in Jesus. Mission is greater than method. A couple of weeks ago, at our Du Bois campus, it was in between the 9 and 10:45 service. I made my way into the lobby and was just hanging out. And someone came up to me and he was talking through the message of that week, and he looked at me with all of this passion, excitement. He goes, mission is greater than method. And I get this big smile. He goes, that's what I'm holding on to from this entire series. And I told him, I go, when I was working on this series, before we even started this series, I wrote that down. And I said to myself, hey, God, if people only hear one thing throughout this entire 8-week series, if they hear that, if they hold on to that, if they never forget that mission is greater than method, I'll be great. And when he said that to me, I'm like, yes. And I just want all of you to know that we, as a church, Tri-County Church, we are just going to hold tightly to the mission. And we're going to just lean into the Apostle Paul's words, all things to all people, so that we may win something. We're going to leverage every method possible. Every method possible. Now, someone else during this series had said to me, they made this comment. They said, hey, Chris, if the church ain't crying, it's dying. And I just got such a laugh to it. And what they're referring to is, well, when a church has young kids a part of it, when you have young kids in the church and they're crying because young kids do that, right? That means the church is alive. But if a church, when they don't have kids crying, they're dying. And so I just want to press in for a quick moment. If you're old, and I'm going to draw the old line, I'm going to draw it right at age 50. Now, if you're in your 40s, you can come join us. But if you're 50, I'm 52. If you're 50 or older, you're in the old category. I just want you to know, you should be shifting and thinking to yourself, what can I do now to leave the church better than when I got here? That should be your question. What can I do to set up the church better for when I leave? Not leave the church. No. When you leave this earth, I'm talking about generational impact. There's a place in your spiritual journey where all of a sudden you realize, hey, it's not about me. It's about everyone else. And now you start to shift. And you're like, how do I pour into? How do I take the wisdom that God has given me over the years, and how do I pour that into? How do I walk beside people? How do I, as a Christ follower, generously give? So I set the church up better than when I got here. How do I serve? How do I disciple? What can I do to pour back into the church? Because there's a younger generation coming up. And guess what? All of us, we know this to be true. All of our days are numbered. My mom is 79. She'll be 80 next year. And I have watched her model this. She serves her church. She gives generously to her church. She breathes life into her church. She is one of the biggest encouragers to the lead pastor and the staff. I tell you, I just watch my mom because she realizes her time window is small. And she wants to help leave the church better because she knows there's this younger generation coming up. You see, that's mission is greater than method. Well, today we're going to look at one more barrier. And it's a danger flashing warning sign to us to this day, to the future churches, and it's been the warning sign since the very first church. You see, the warning sign is this, that the gravitational pull of every church is to keep people, not to reach people. The gravitational pull, and it is strong, is to turn people to, be insiders, not outside focused, to be me focused, not other people focused, to be what I want, what I need, what I like, what I desire, what I think church should be, not on mission, those outside the church. And the Apostle Paul is going to teach us, model for us, a master class on how to stay focused, how to fight that gravitational pull and stay focused on reaching people. Well, like I mentioned, with this entire series, we've been in the book of Acts. A guy named Luke wrote the story of Acts. It's the story of the launch and the movement of the church. And today we're going to be in Acts chapter 17. Again, watch Paul teach us and model for us a master class I'm staying focused on mission, reaching people who desperately need to know the good news about Jesus. So in Acts chapter 17, verse 16, this is where we're going to step in. While Paul, the Apostle Paul, was waiting for them in Athens, Paul had gotten to this great, famous city of Athens. And we're told that he was greatly distressed. Now, we don't have one English word to describe the strength, the intensity of what Paul was feeling. A word that's probably the closest to depict what he was feeling internally is that he was infuriated at what? To see the city was full of idols. Now, we don't know if this is the Apostle Paul's very first time in Athens or not, but I think it is. Like, it just feels like he arrives in Athens, he's walking through the streets, he's looking around, and the emotion as he sees all of these temples and all of these idols and all of these altars, and he is righteously infuriated by the darkness, the spiritual evil, the spiritual darkness, the pagan worship everywhere through Athens. And so what did he do when he was so infuriated? When he was so greatly distressed? So he reasoned in the synagogue with both Jews and God-fearing Greeks. So he goes to the synagogue and starts telling them, hey, the promised Messiah has come. He died, and God raised him from the grave. But he didn't stop there. Luke tells us that he went into the marketplace, the Agora. This was the epicenter of Athens. This is where everyone came to grocery shop and trade and buy goods. I mean, it was the central hub, the central meeting place. Everyone in the city came to the marketplace, came to the Agora. And he had conversations with anyone who was there. One day, a group of Epicurean and Stoic philosophers. Now, the Epicureans and the Stoics both had schools in Athens, and they had vastly different perspectives. But a group of them happened to be there one day and began to debate with Paul. Now, that word debate doesn't reflect like our modern day debating. You know, the modern day debate, what we see in our culture, just people screaming back and forth, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. And they just scream back and forth until one person leaves. This wasn't that type of debate. They were having conversations. They were having philosophical conversations. And this, you're going to see, was just part of that culture in Athens. And some of them asked, what is this babbler trying to say? Now, I love this word babbler. The original use for this word babbler literally was defined as a seed picker. They first used this ancient Greek word to describe a bird on the ground, let's say chicken, that's just aimlessly picking up seeds from the ground, like in the barnyard. And then over time, that word kind of morphed to someone going into a junkyard, trying to pick out junk from the junkyard. Can you find a treasure in the junkyard? And then it kind of morphed into this philosophical world where they were saying about Paul that Paul was just snapping up different philosophical ideas from different people. He was a seed picker. What is this babbler trying to say? Others remarked, he seems to be advocating for foreign gods, that there's some other gods out there that he's talking about. And Luke goes, hey, they said this because Paul was preaching the good news about Jesus. This would have been a foreign god. This would be a new god for them. They're like, okay, there's this Jesus God. And what about this new God? We've never heard about that God. And the resurrection. And a lot of scholars believe that they kind of tied this ancient Greek word for resurrection as possibly another God that got connected to this new God, Jesus. But they were confused. So they looked at Paul, and they took Paul and brought him to the meeting of the Areopagus. Now, the Areopagus is this big Greek word, but let me simplify it. It's two Greek words slammed together. The first word is Ares, and the last word is translated rock or hill. Maybe in your Bible, you have the name Mars Hill. Well, Ares is the Greek god of war. And Mars is just the Roman version. Remember, in Greek mythology and Roman mythology, they basically had all the same gods, just different names. So Mars Hill and Ares Rock, it's the same name. It's the same label. Now, back in 2019, I had the opportunity to literally stand on Mars Hill on the Areopagus. And I snapped this picture standing on Mars Hill. And just a stone's throw away from Mars Hill, or the Areopagus, is the famous Acropolis. The Acropolis, the highest point of all of Athens. In fact, the name Acropolis means high point city. And there on the Acropolis were four temples to different Greek, Roman gods, goddesses. In fact, in this picture, you see people climbing up. And on the far side, right at the tip of that really tall pine tree, is a temple to Nike. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Nike, like our shoes, Nike, the goddess of victory. But if you follow the people all the way up past the columns, you would come to the famous Parthenon. I mean, this structure is breathtaking. It's the temple to Athena. And during this time period, it wouldn't have looked like this with white marble. In fact, what scholars discovered is that they had painted these temples in bright colors, vibrant colors. So there wasn't white marble or even weathered marble. No, this would have been such vibrant colors. And so Paul's standing on Mars Hill, on Ares Rock, and the backdrop is the Acropolis with the Parthenon. And these Stoic philosophers, Epicurean philosophers, look at Paul and they ask the question. They're like, hey, may we know what this new teaching is that you're presenting? They were confused. They had questions. You're bringing some strange ideas to our ears, and we would like to know what they mean. And then Luke gives us such an important insight. He goes, all the Athenians and foreigners who lived there spent their time doing nothing but talking about and listening to the latest ideas. Luke is like, hey, I just want you to know, this sounds really strange, but if you grew up in Athens, or if you're a foreigner, but you've been living in Athens any length of time, this was just commonplace. Everywhere else, this feels strange. But for those in Athens, they all understood this part of their culture. Now, I love salads. Every week I eat salads. I have a container of salad made up in my refrigerator. Almost every lunch I eat a salad for lunch. 5-6 times a week at least I'm eating a salad. I've loved to eat salad for decades. And 10 years ago, my wife and I were invited to interview for the lead pastor position here at Tri-County Church. And one of our very first interview official meals was at a great restaurant in Du Bois, Luigi's. They got the back room. We walked in. We sat, a big, long table, a bunch of people there. People started to order, and I ordered a salad because it's what I usually eat. And I tried to eat healthier. So I ordered a salad. We were all talking, and finally they started to deliver the food. And when they set my salad in front of me, I was kind of shocked because piled on top of my salad were French fries. And I literally said something to people. I'm like, why is there French fries? A salad is healthy. Why are there French fries on my salad? Everyone starts to laugh. And what I discovered was that's just kind of a central western Pennsylvania thing. And over the years, I've just kind of gotten accustomed to, I guess, this small part of the world, let's dump fries on salad. But nowhere else, I'm just telling you, nowhere else do they put fries on salad. It's just this little part of the world. And I love when people come and visit and they order a salad. I don't tell them. I just wait to see their face when their salad is delivered to them and there's fries piled on top. And this is what Luke is saying. He's like, hey, I know this doesn't make any sense, but if you lived in Athens, you just get this is part of the culture. So Paul stood up in the meeting of the Areopagus, and he said, now remember, we started off and Paul was infuriated. So what do you think he says now? He's overwhelmed by the temples and the altars and the spiritual evil in this city. Right at his back is the Acropolis. What does he say as he addresses this group of pagans? He stands up and he says to them, you're all going to hell. Repent now, or you're going to spend eternity in hell. Nah, he didn't say that. He didn't say that at all. In fact, that would have worked 2,000 years ago, and that doesn't work to this day. That doesn't win people to Jesus. That just puts up a bigger barrier between Jesus and those people. And this is where Paul, masterclass. He's still infuriated by what he's seen. But listen and feel his compassion and grace and love. He stands up and he says, people of Athens, I see that in every way you're very religious. Right away, he finds a connection point. Right away, he finds common ground. He's like, hey, I see how spiritual you are. I see it. I've walked around. I've seen all of these temples. In fact, right behind me, I can see that you are spiritual people. He finds a connection point. He finds a common ground. For I have walked around and looked carefully at your objects of worship. I've even found an altar with an inscription to an unknown God. He's like, you have an altar. Just in case you missed a God. Just in case you weren't informed about a God. Just in case someone slipped up. You have one just in case there's one you have missed. So, you're ignorant. Now that word for us feels really strong. But what Paul was saying, he's like, so you just don't know. It's okay. I see that you're religious. I see that you're spiritual. I see that you've been trying to figure out the spiritual world around you. You're misled. You're way off the mark. But I see your desire. And you just don't know what you don't know. You're ignorant of this very thing. You worship. And this is what I'm going to proclaim to you. This is what I'm going to make known to you. Hey, I'm going to fill the gaps. I'm going to connect the dots. I'm going to give you a different perspective. I'm going to help you out because I see how spiritual you are. The God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth and does not live in temples built by human hands. See the temples built by human hands? Again, the setting is everything. And he's not served by human hands as if he needed anything. The Greeks understood that the Greek Roman gods needed to be served by human beings. And the one true God doesn't need that. Rather, he himself gives everyone life and breath and everything else. The one true God is a generous God. From one man, he made all the nations, and they should inhabit the whole earth. And he marked out their appointed times and history and the boundaries of their lands. God did this so that they would seek him and perhaps reach out to him and find him. Though he's not far, he is close. And all of this sets up for what Paul is going to say next, because he had drawn them all in. They were all leaning in. And then Paul, getting eye contact with all of them, he goes, for in him we live and move and have our being. As some of your own poets have said, we are his offspring. Now, what Paul does, and this is genius, and this is what he models for us, and this is what we cannot miss. All of a sudden, Paul brings them in, and he starts to quote two of their famous poets. The first one is from Epimenides. And Epimenides wrote a poem, and it was from Minos, the son of Zeus. And so he pulls out these lines from this famous pagan poem of a son sharing with his father, the god Zeus. And the second line comes from Aratus, which comes from this hymn, a hymn to Zeus. And so Paul just pulls in these secular, these pagan songs, hymns, poems. It says, you're close, but you're so far away. And then he builds a bridge. And he goes, therefore, since we are God's offspring, we should not think that the divine being is like gold or silver or stone, an image made by human hands and skill. In the past, God overlooked such ignorance, but now he commands, and now Paul's leaning in, right? He's found connection points. He's found common ground. He's brought them on a spiritual journey with him, and then he just kind of goes, hey, so you know, the one true God's not messing around. But now he commands all people everywhere to repent, to turn. For he has set a day when he will judge, and the world with justice by the man he has appointed. He has given proof of this to everyone by the raising him from the dead. Jesus is alive. And when they heard this about the resurrection of the dead, some sneered, but others wanted to hear more. So Paul shared more. And Luke tells us that some of the people became followers of Paul, meaning that Paul was their spiritual mentor, spiritual leader, spiritual discipler, and believed. They put their faith and trust in Jesus. And among them was Dionysius, a member of the Areopagus, also a woman named Damaris, and a number of others. You see, the gravitational pull of every church, 2,000 years ago to this day, is to keep people, not to reach people. And Paul says, hey, church, it's all about reaching people, even in places that we just don't understand, even in places maybe we don't want to be a part of, even in places where it feels so dark. That it's about mission, sharing Jesus with everyone. And so the question we, as Christ followers, if you're a Christ follower, the questions we should be asking is, how do we build bridges to help people take steps to Jesus? How do we build bridges, not barriers? And there's just a couple thoughts that I want to encourage all of us with. One of the ways we build bridges, not barriers, is we have to stay committed to be outward facing. Remember, the gravitational pull of the church is inward, is inside. It's church for me. It's church my way. It's what I like church to be. It's what I want church to be. It's what, again, if you're a Christ follower, I just want you to, right? The gravitational pull is pulling you inward, inside, looking at you, your wants, your desires spiritually, not outward. And I just want to ask all of you, commit with us to continue to be outward facing. I just want you to know, this is our pursuit, to stay outward facing. Why? Because we want to tear down barriers, build bridges to people who don't know Jesus. And when you commit to being outward facing, your heart's going to break. And I hope it does. Paul, the phrase was, he was infuriated. Why? Because his heart broke for how spiritually dark, how spiritually lost, how spiritually broken people were. He walked through the streets of Athens. He walked through the agora. He saw people. He was there, and he was infuriated because he realized that they were walking in darkness. But what did that not cause him to do? And this happens so many times in churches, right? People see the darkness in the world. They see the evil. They see the disconnect. They see all the stuff going on in culture. And I'm telling you, the gravitational pull just wants to pull people, and Christians just want to hunker down. They want to hunker down. They want to set up bigger barriers. They want to keep safe from the dark, evil world. And then they start praying, "Oh, Jesus, come now." And Jesus is like, "No, not yet. There's more people that need to know about me." So allow your heart to break. But when your heart breaks, move into mission. And Paul, modeling for us, found common ground. He met people where they were and said, "Can we take a walk together?" And he took them on a journey. And ultimately, when you find common ground where people are and you're willing to jump in the mess with them, willing to roll up your sleeves and say, I'm going to do what I can as a Christ follower. I'm committed. And then you seek the opportunity to share Jesus. To tell them about Jesus. Jesus, the Son of a living God that breathes hope into this world. Jesus, the Son of the living God that illuminates the darkness. Jesus, the Son of a living God that is close. It's by grace that you're saved through faith. You can never earn it and work for it. It's a gift that he's extended to you. All you have to do is accept it. And along the way, when you accept that gift, when you place your faith, your trust, and belief in Jesus along the way, you're an experience. What life to the full, life abundantly is really about. Let's commit together to hold tightly to mission. Methods are going to come and go. But let's hold on to mission, because mission will fight the gravitational pull and will continue to remain to be outward facing. Outward facing. With a heart breaking for the spiritual darkness in this world that will drive us into mission, trying to find common ground. Why? Because we have the message of hope, the message of Jesus that eradicates the darkness. Now we walk with people on their spiritual journey. Let's hold tightly to mission. Hold tightly to mission. And everything we can do is break down barriers, build bridges. And if we do that, the church will stay uncomplicated. Let's pray. Lord, I just pray that we'll do all of that. And even when we start to turn inside, Lord, I just pray that you'll just kind of lift our chin and point us back to the mission that you've placed on your church. That, Lord, we'll be proactive with you in what you're trying to do in the lives of people that desperately need to know your Son, Jesus. In your name I pray. Amen.